This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 246 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. It's a deep dive interview with James Mwenda today. You might remember I kicked off these deep dive into thoughtful travel episodes last month, and about monthly I'm going to feature someone who has so much amazing stuff to say I can't bear not to put it all together in one episode. So James Mwenda actually approached me to be a guest on the Thoughtful Travel Podcast by email, and as soon as I read up on what he's done in life so far, I contacted him immediately to say yes, please come on. So James will give some more details about his career later in our chat, but let me introduce him briefly by saying he now runs an expedition company in Kenya, and that's a venture which has come out of his many years of experience as a park ranger and working in conservation. So in particular, for the past decade or so, he worked at Ol Pejeta Conservancy in Kenya as the caretaker of the last remaining northern white rhinos in the world. Very sadly, the last male northern white rhino, Sudan, died just a couple of years ago in 2018, and there are now two female northern white rhinos left, a mother and daughter pair. James actually has referred to the daughter as his girlfriend at times. Now, you might recall that in last week's episode 245, I played James's definition of thoughtful travel. But to continue that conversation, I actually asked him, why did he think people are talking more about thoughtful travel and these kinds of topics these days?
I think we really are having a lot of global conversations, especially we as the contemporary humans. There's a lot of conversations about the environment, about climate, about everything else. You know, we are being more cautious how we live because we've seen how otherwise, our actions can influence a lot of negative change, maybe either to the climate or to the environment that we so need to survive. And so I think we are in changing times where we really have to change the perspective of how we see things, because eventually, unless we have a change in the way we do things, the way we are living at this time, especially in our relationship to the environment, is not sustainable. Mm-hmm. So when we are talking conversations about being thoughtful about the environment, maybe what we eat, what we wear, how does it affect the environment? The same applies to travel, and even how we travel now becomes a question and something that we have to put a bit of thought to when we choose to travel.
We'll get back to this topic a little bit more later on, but first I wanted to go back and ask James to explain his career so far because it's fascinating.
I was born in a small village called Mutindwa on the windward side of the famous Mount Kenya. Mount Kenya is the second tallest mountain in Africa. And in the village, I was very close to the park. Mount Kenya is a World Heritage site. UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we had elephants residing there. And when I was a little boy, we had severe conflicts with the elephants. They would come from the forest, come and eat everything that was on the farm. And also, our area was very busy with tourists going up Mount Kenya because our route to the mountain is the most beautiful and the most scenic route of all the routes in Mount Kenya. So we had a lot of tourists coming to see the mountain and hike. So when I was young, what pushed me into conservation was the conflict. I loved when we would call for help, and the Kenya Wildlife Service rangers. The Kenya Wildlife Service is the body, is a government body that is given the role to oversight the well-being of flora and fauna in Kenya. So they would come and scare away the elephants back into the forest. And I really admired this as a solution to help our community. at the age of 7, I just knew that elephants were just creatures who had no understanding. And that's the reason why they would come and break the fence and come into the farms and eat anything they could find on the farms. And so I desired, like, what if I became a ranger and maybe come and resided within the community and help the community? And that's when my dream to be in conservation was born. Unfortunately, I wasn't so lucky because I came from a very humble family. We couldn't afford, leave alone school fees. Even food was hard to afford. And I couldn't really pursue my career in conservation academically like I wanted to. But I was lucky somehow, some way to make my way through school by working hard and working on people's farms. And when I finished my high school, I decided to go and seek for employment. And that's when I landed my job as a ranger in Ol Pejeta Conservancy.
So James ended up working at Ol Pejeta Conservancy for almost a decade before he left quite recently to found his expedition company. More on that soon. But first I asked James to tell me more about working with the northern white rhinos.
You can think and imagine being one of the people that oversights the well-being of the last of our species. I mean, one of the reasons why I chose to leave my caretaking job for a while now is the emotional toll that it has taken on me. And I think this is the first time I am saying this. I really put a lot of thoughts into my job as a caretaker. I really felt so sorry for these rhinos. I really worked so hard day and night for these rhinos to try and share their story, to try and inspire people to care for the planet, to try and do anything we can to make sure this does not happen to any other species. It's been an emotional roller coaster being there on an everyday basis to oversight and look after the well-being of these animals. And what started as a career, as a simple dream of being a ranger and trying to do, ended up being a very, very big emotional investment that I had to bear every day for the last almost 8 years.
Yeah.
And so it's a job that requires your emotional foundation to be so strong. And at some point, I felt like I was losing it at times because I wouldn't really in my age as a young person comprehend that we had come to this. We had come to a point where we have to even save a species through a scientific intervention. A whole large mammal like a rhino, a 3-ton animal. It was really hard to comprehend. And then it was really hard to witness it every single day for the last 8 years.
I can't understand, but I can imagine what you say about the emotional toll of looking after the rhinos. You went down a few rabbit holes on the internet and have watched some of your videos and some other, read other things about your work with them. And I got pretty emotional just reading and watching about it, but let alone for you to have spent, the best part of a decade working with them. They're kind of like family, really, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's all what you wake up to do. I spend more time with the rhinos than I did with my family, top of 26 days a month looking after them. So, and that's the reason why I even called the youngest rhino Fatu my girlfriend. She qualified to. I spent a lot of time with her than I would spend even with my own girlfriend, So they were a family. You're completely right to say that.
In the show notes, I'll include some links to some of the videos and articles I watched and read about James's work with the rhinos because it really deserves more attention and a greater deep dive. After those experiences now, James wants to use what he's learned and what he knows for the greater good.
It's had taken an emotional toll and kind of leaving my career as a caretaker to kind of major into my travel business was a way of relieving myself from that emotional aspect, even though I will be going to see the rhinos once in a while, because I was asking myself so many questions. What if science does not succeed? What,
yes,
will I go down down the books as one of the people that was there when Fatu will be the last of our kind. Such a beautiful animal that had to face the extremes of human greed and the consequences of our actions as we humans, and they can barely say anything on their own. Just wait until their fate unfolds. So it was really hard for me, but I tried to do anything I could, especially when I was directly working with them. And now I just want to use this inspiration that I've received to kind of merge it into my travel business to kind of create insightful travel. That when we travel, we just take an extra aspect of thinking about the environment when we travel. And that's where I just saw as an opportunity, because most of the travel companies I've seen in Kenya have just been offering, like, selling destinations. Like someone wants to come to Kenya and see the Masai Mara. They just want to come with a checklist and take away the animals. I've seen an elephant, I've seen a lion, I've seen a crocodile, and they take these and then they are happy. But what about if we have a thoughtful travel where you can sit down and watch an elephant for even the whole day, learn their behaviors, learn how they communicate, learn how they live. Ask yourselves what we can do. Just know how their numbers have declined. What are the factors that are leading to decline? Ask yourself what you do to make sure that 100 years there's elephants living. They're not just aspects of making us happy and taking them off the checklist, but they are beings that require us to understand that they are family bonds. They are, it's just having that thoughtful aspect that I feel we need to change the travel industry by putting a little bit more thought into why and for what reason we travel.
100%. And that is the kind of experience that I want for myself when I one day get to Kenya. I don't want to have a list of 15 animals and just, cruise around and tick them off as I see them. But I would rather spend a week with someone like you to hear the stories and learn from what you've learnt throughout your career. You won't be surprised to hear that this kind of approach absolutely sits with my ideas for thoughtful travel. So I was very impressed with what James had to say, and I asked him to tell me a bit more about his approach to taking travellers on trips in Kenya.
I kind of feel that when we choose maybe to travel, for instance, when we choose to get on a safari, we are going on a vacation, for instance, I think it should be just exactly that. It should be, we just want to move from whatever part of the world we are coming from, and then come and sit down or come and travel around Kenya and spend a lot of time connecting with the diverse biodiversity we have in Kenya, like the various aspects of sites that we have in Kenya. Take, for instance, you're coming on a safari. You want to take, I am the person who advises my clients to kind of stay in one place for even 3 or 4 days. I don't want to you can do the whole country in one visit alone, unless you had like 2 months to do it. So I have seen there is need to have very chill travel experiences where you can stay in one park for 4 days. You rather visit 2 parks in Kenya and make the most out of it, connect with most of the animals there, understand much of those animals there, even know their names if they have names, kind of understand their behaviors, how they live, how they survive, how the environment that they live in is the environment safe, and even try to make it more immersive experience, where it is not just about coming and sitting down in the vehicle and enjoying the animals. You really want to get some hands-on experience, maybe walk with the rangers, maybe meet the anti-poaching dogs, like the case in Ol Pejeta, see how these dogs work, see how they are used to protect other animals within the conservancy, visit a community program somewhere, see how conservation really helps communities, even adopt an animal, let it be the gift you leave, kind of adopt an animal, name an animal. So it's kind of have an immersive travel experience that will leave you much more inspired to do more, but also leaves a very positive impact to the place that you visit. So my ideal of having this travel company is to have a very chill travel experiences that are more thoughtful about the places that we visit, but also that are more giving to the environment than the much we are taking, you know?
Yeah. Oh, it sounds perfect. I much prefer wherever I'm traveling to travel more slowly and spend more time in fewer places. And I can't think of a better place to do that than in Kenya, and to get to know just, a couple of parks or a couple of areas much better than trying to see everything that sounds, completely exactly the way I want to travel. So, yeah, I think it's a great approach. Well done. So we then moved the conversation on to it's the unavoidable topic of the pandemic. And I asked James about the effect that the COVID-19 pandemic has had on tourism in Kenya. And actually that led us to talking about the positive and negative impacts of travel overall.
Yeah, the tourism industry is what has been so badly hit. Tourism, I think, is the second foreign exchange earner. Second from agriculture in Kenya, employs over directly 300,000 people.
Wow.
And the coming of COVID has really disrupted travel at large because of all the bans that were put and the restrictions that were put to curb down the virus. Eventually this has led to much more suffering. It is the time that we now have realized, and if someone has not been keen to know, it's time now we advise them to let them know that the moment they start thinking of traveling to a certain place, how important that decision is to the survival of places that need this kind of attention. We have seen poaching rising in some countries when COVID came, because the dollars that people pay in terms of revenue for traveling could not be used to kind of continue the operations costs to put people on the ground to continue protecting these animals. For instance, when we are talking about traveling to Africa, where we have species of concern like rhinos, elephants, lions, and so forth. So, for instance, where I was working in Ol Pejeta Conservancy, it is the largest black rhino sanctuary in Eastern Central Africa. The coming of COVID-19, they had a shortfall of around $2 million in terms of revenue that they lost to tourism, which now means they had to cut down so much of even the operations cost to survive on the environment, which now meant putting much more pressure on them to keeping these animals safe, bearing in mind how risky it is to have rhinos in a conservation area because of the demand that their horns have.
Yeah.
So it's high time that travelers and people who love traveling know that the moment they hop on that safari come, they might not even realize it, but they are directly contributing to the welfare of these conservation areas and conservation organizations that they choose to visit. And it is the reason why I realized that there is even much more opportunity to do good when people travel, so that people can have insightful travel, but more important, when they go back home, they will feel that we have given back to the environment as much as we could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the lack of tourists that from the pandemic has highlighted a lot of situations where both tourists are very important, and where in some places where fewer tourists are better. So in other places where the environment has needed less people. So hopefully all of these kinds of things we hear about around the world will remain, sort of front of mind, and we will adjust our travelling to hopefully travel, in a more impactful way in the future.
Absolutely, yes. And I think all these are conversations that we are having, as much as someone might say the world is healing from people not traveling much and causing so much problems, it is also evident that traveling is so much needed for the survival of other places as well. So
yes, exactly.
It is conversations that we really need to approach with caution, because we don't want to take so much sides and then ending up to the extreme at the detriment of the other, because
yes, exactly.
some areas we might traveling might be more impactful negatively to the environment, but on the other, traveling is more impactful on a very positive way for the sustainability of these areas.
I love this part of our discussion with James. I appreciate that it's not black and white. Anything to do with the effects of travel are nowhere near as black and white as some people want to say. Some people will say, we can't travel, it's bad for the environment. Others will say, we have to travel no matter what, no matter how. But there's definitely so many grey areas and the need for a lot of conversations to figure out what kinds of travel and where and how are actually beneficial. Now, one aspect of that actually is supporting local communities, and I know that James is emphasising supporting local communities with his expeditions, so I asked him to tell me some more about that.
One of the motivations for me to start my own travel company is I come very close from Mount Kenya. Mm-hmm. So to me, I want to, especially with hiking expeditions that I will be organizing to do hiking Mount Kenya, it is to directly benefit my community. We are the immediate people that protect the mountain. And it is so hard to look the young people in the village and tell them that you don't need to go and do logging or steal in the forest or go hunt in the forest because it is bad. But if you're able to give a complementary aspect of survival, then you can be able to look them in the eyes and tell them like, hey guys, this is wrong. So my first idea is, whenever I get hiking expeditions to Mount Kenya, I give the job to my local guides and my local porters to take the guests up the mountain. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing this now for like 4 years. Mm-hmm. This directly gives resources to the village. They are able to understand the importance of maintaining this mountain. This money filters down to the person who has a shop within the village because that is where they are going to buy food for going to Mount Kenya. You need transport. I normally use the transport even within the local. So I'm trying to economically empower my community.
James also told me it's hard as a young person like him in Kenya to have the confidence to set up a tourism business and believe that people around the world will come and hire you. And he wants to help and inspire more people in Kenya to do that. And I'm pretty sure he will. So finally, I asked James about the issue of wildlife tourism and what kinds of experiences we can have with animals that will actually help ensure they thrive.
I mean, the best way to help them is just hop on a safari and visit the parks, for instance, in Kenya. Let me talk about Kenya, because when you get on a safari, you won't be able to go and pet an elephant, a wild elephant, or a wild rhino, or a wild buffalo. They are super aggressive. So you can hop on a safari with me. We will just sit on the van. The much we can do is maybe get on a walking safari where you can see some of these animals on foot, but with the help of very highly trained rangers to help with the guidance. And this is ideally the real aspect of travel. I mean, if you have to travel and feel the affinity that you need to go and cuddle an animal, you need to feel like you need to go and sleep or spend time holding animals, then I don't want to say it's extremely bad because, for instance,
but it's not good.
Predator, we have a blind. It's not good, definitely. But I have also realized it's about how we see it, because I've realized, for instance, where I used to work, Ol Pejeta Conservancy, there's a blind black rhino that has been habituated to people, and people can get close to and interact with.
Right.
And one of the things is that being blind, he cannot survive on his own in the field, in the wild. And so he was made an ambassador animal. And when I was working there, one thing that I really wanted someone to understand is that when they went close to him, it becomes a special connection when you get close to such a magnificent animal like a rhino. You are able to get so close to them, feel their strength, their power, but then their vulnerability to us humans. You leave there a very different person.
Wow.
Like that kind of experience of getting that close allows us to, when you get on a safari, we can never get close to the black rhinos in the wild. I will tell you, these animals are very brave, very dangerous, super aggressive, very mean. They can even attack the people, so we just need to stay a distance from them. But conversely, if you're taken very close to these animals and you're told, like, unfortunately, as much as aggressive this animal is, a man with a bullet shoots it, kills it for this horn that you can feel or that you can cut, and it's just mere keratin. It becomes a special bond and a special connection.
Right.
So it's all about the perspective, because the problem with us humans is that we sometimes interpret things and do things for the sake of our own satisfaction without having a thoughtful aspect. And that's why the reason why I love your podcast, because you're saying thoughtful travel, because when we put a bit of thought into about everything, we are able to analyze things a little bit much better. So it is wrong. I really don't encourage that. And that's why my safaris will be all purely based on nature, like
Right. Yeah.
enjoy the environment, see the animals for what they are. Just if you don't enjoy seeing an elephant on the plains, walking, behind the beautiful sunset of Africa, or the sunrise of on the plains, enjoying themselves, being elephants, then you have a problem with understanding what bonds are all about. That's what I felt like. I have lived in the bush 10 years. I've been chased by elephants like thousands of times. But I find them beautiful and fascinating on the plains when they walk. Their majesty, their power, their strength makes me feel so small. So I think the best way to help animals is really to understand their environment. For instance, if you find an animal that, for instance, is blind like Baraka is, or it's somewhere else and can be used for the purpose of raising awareness about the plight of other animals, honestly, to me, I don't have so much problem with that, because these blind animal would otherwise blindly walk in the park and be killed by poachers, or
Yeah,
be
exactly.
killed by other animals. But
Yeah.
if it's there and can be used to help educate people the importance of protecting these animals, and then definitely you can never go close to the wild animals, then absolutely it's an idea. So it's, to me, is about awareness, and I cannot tell you how many thousands of people that, by maybe, for instance, getting close to these animals, where you are able to inspire them to kind of see how strong these animals, but then again how vulnerable it is. So my safari company, I will be doing much more of wild travel experiences, of course, with very minimal animal interaction.
Yes. Yeah.
Just within the areas and you realize that in Kenya, we really have a very strong Kenya Wildlife Service, which is a government body that oversights that there is no absolute petting of animals. So even the animal that people can get close to is the animal that the government has given the permit for someone to
Oh,
get
wow.
close to.
That's brilliant.
It's not just anyone taming animals and allowing people to cuddle
It's really regulated. That's awesome. Yeah.
No, yeah, it's very regulated in Kenya.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That's really good. Yeah, yeah. And the concept of the ambassador animal is something I haven't really heard explained that way, but it also makes sense as well. So yeah, I think there's still a long way to go with encouraging all tourists to understand, and perhaps not in Kenya, but perhaps in other parts of the world where there's animals are not necessarily as well treated, and it's hard to. A lot more people are understanding. Like, I think these days, anyone I speak to would say, "Oh yes, you should not ride an elephant." Like, they've understood that concept. And 10 years ago, a lot of people didn't know that, and they would go to Thailand and places like that and ride an elephant happily. But the messages are definitely improving and getting out there. We're getting there.
We're getting there, absolutely. And I think that's the reason why we need to have the balance, because we are in the middle of conversations that are shifting us towards the right direction. And that's why I don't like taking extremes of each side, because all these conversations I have, and if you take so much standing on one extreme side, you end up maybe not understanding the other side, and then we end up fighting for such an amazing cause as protecting the planet.
Yes.
So
yes.
it is about enlightening one another. It's about talking and having discussions with one another. It is about letting one another know. Like I would rather sit down with someone and tell like why this is not right than just say like it is you are a bad person. You can do this. Like it is about educating one another. I just feel like it is the only way we can win the war about our planet.
So that's my deep dive into thoughtful travel with James Mwenda. You can probably imagine I left that conversation feeling really inspired. In fact, it happened very late at night for me and I couldn't sleep I was, awake until the wee hours of the morning just thinking back over our conversation. So thank you again, James. It was so much fun to get to meet you and I can't wait to, at some stage in the future, come and meet you in person in Kenya. So I will just run over some of the links that I'm going to leave in the show notes for you so that you can find out some more. So first of all, James's expedition company is called Jemu Expeditions, Jemu Expeditions.com. I'll also leave a few links to some of the YouTube videos and other articles that I enjoyed reading and watching about James's work at the Ol Pejeta Conservancy and with the northern white rhinos. So there'll be a bunch of those in the show notes. For this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/246. I will also leave links for our Facebook group for Thoughtful Travellers and our new LinkedIn group. If you want to find the LinkedIn group for Thoughtful Travellers, it is at notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. We're just starting to have some good chats there as well. So I hope that you've been as inspired as I've been by this chat with James Mwenda. And of course, as always, thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.